Okay, thanks Steve for the introduction. My name is Chris Mehringer. My company is Park Street. We've got a limited amount of time, and I was going to say that I'm going to speak quickly, but after Brandy, I think I'm going to actually speak pretty slowly. So before we get started, I'd like to thank the USA Trade Tasting for hosting us today, and in particular, Sid and Milvika Patel for all of their work organizing the event together with their team members. This has really become an important stop on the annual trade show circuit, and particularly because it has a fresh perspective with respect to innovation, with an emphasis on emerging brands and supplier and distribution relationships. So before we get started, by show of hands, who here is a brand owner or supplier? Okay, how about an importer or distributor? All right, any service providers or professionals, attorneys, marketing, consulting? Okay, so hopefully there will be something in here for everybody. This deck is really meant for an hour and a half discussion, and we've got 30 minutes, and I'd like to leave some time for Q&A at the end. So I'm going to go pretty quickly and really just hit the highlights, but I wanted to include the full deck because there's a lot of helpful content in there, particularly with respect to emerging brands with national aspirations. I believe that USA Trade Tasting is going to make the deck available after the conference, but you can also get it from me or from Sarah Nagel, who runs our client development team. She's here. And as Steve mentioned, at Park Street, we provide back office solutions to alcoholic beverage brands. So that's everything from importing, distribution, logistics, regulatory compliance, accounting, working capital, you name it. Pretty much everything other than sales, marketing, and product development. Our clients range from entrepreneurial craft distillers all the way to multi-brand global suppliers and literally everything in between. I'm an entrepreneur by training and also by experience. I am not a brand expert. I am not a wine and spirits enthusiast. I'm a beer drinker. My favorite beer is Budweiser, gulp. But I love building businesses. And at Park Street, we love helping other people build their businesses, particularly in the alcoholic beverage sector. We have over 100 employees and operations across the United States and the EU, and we work with brands literally from the United States and all around the world. And I mention this because it affords us a unique vantage point to really see the sausage making. So I can't tell you what brands are going to work, what products are going to trend next. I couldn't pick a brand winner to save my life. But we can share with you some of the processes and formats that we see that have been successful and will help brands increase their likelihood of success. So with that, why don't we go to the deck? Let me see if I can do this here. Okay, so briefly, I'll tell you what today's discussion does and does not do. We're focusing on the US market with a particular emphasis on spirits, but really highly applicable to wine as well, with an emphasis on emerging brands with national aspirations. And this is designed to provide you an overview of really the key considerations on figuring out your route to market strategy. What this doesn't do, it doesn't provide a comprehensive, in-depth, detailed look. It's certainly not one size fits all, but we hope it provides some useful frameworks for you. These are the three biggest takeaways of the entire presentation. So the first is the importance of differentiation. What's the unique selling proposition of your brand? Why should a distributor take it on with the hundreds or thousands of other brands in the portfolio? And why should a salesperson sell your brand and not another one, particularly one that he or she may already be selling? The second is the concept of trying to get more than your fair share of attention at your distributor. There's no silver bullet for solving distributor relationships, but the concept on this one is if you look at a weighted model, it's really, there's no rationale for a salesperson to give you attention. You know, if they're selling millions or tens of millions or hundreds of millions of dollars of another product, why do they want to take on the burden of having a new brand? So you really got to figure out ways to capture more than your fair share of attention inside of a distributor in order to help your brand get traction. And then the last are economies of scale. And the concept behind this is taking advantage of opportunities in the market to leverage economies of scale. And it's really very much of a resource reallocation model where you take resources away from those things which are complex and time-consuming and don't really add a lot of value, and you reallocate them to those things which are going to help you create long-term competitive advantages. Those things being sales, marketing, product innovation. So as I was walking up here, I saw there's a woman here. You have a very handsome bag there, right? So who makes that bag? Coach. So why did you buy that? I got a pretty good idea. Because Coach can make it better than you can at a much lower price point. Does that sound right? So that's really what should drive a lot of your investment allocation when you're getting started. When you want to ship product, call Hillebrand. When you want to store product, call Western Carriers. I think I saw Josh Wand here in the back. If you want to hire people and build a team, call BevForce. It's what they do, it's what they specialize. Those three companies are examples of people that specialize in a very discrete component of the industry, and they've invested a lot of time, a lot of money to create systems and build economies of scale, which are available for you to use. And that's what we do with the back office. Okay, so moving along here. Route to market, you can read that one later. Okay, these are some of the four top considerations of what goes into coming up with a successful route to market strategy. So the first is it really needs to be market driven. It's not driven by what you want to do, this, et cetera. You want to look and start from the outside in. So see if you can identify factors or trends in the market to determine where you can make impactful, incremental innovation. Wholesale innovation is great, but it's super expensive and very risky. So incremental innovation is really a great way to go, and that's something that you read in the market. It's not something that is driven by your own desires. The second is it has to be coherent. So you need to match your capabilities and your resources with your route to market. Who here is phenomenally wealthy? Not me, I'm not raising my hands, okay? So unless you're phenomenally wealthy and would like to become less so, don't try and launch simultaneously in 50 states with your own in-house sales force, running your own back office, and advertising on television. Because it's just way too complex, it's way too expensive, and there's so many moving parts that you're never going to be able to determine where the leakage is happening, where the slippage is. And you're never, therefore, going to be able to repair it and get more return on your investment. So match your capabilities and your resources to your plan. And then the next is to make sure that you're taking a balanced approach. And there's generally at least three stakeholders or considerations here. The first is what your customers want. So if you take your distributors, for instance, distributors, they want to order less product in smaller increments, get higher margins, shorter payment terms, and they want you to invest more resources on the street to help your product move, right? What you want revenue growth, you want market share. And then you also have to focus on what's called your cost to serve. And that's how much everything is costing you, and you want to keep that obviously as low as possible. But you need to find a balance among these three things. And then the last, and this is the most important, is to make sure that your route to market strategy has some flexibility built into it. You have to build what we call a short feedback loop mechanism. And this is what allows you to pull actual data out of the market so you can see how your plan is performing, and then you can make adjustments, because once you're able to optimize it, then you can start putting in more resources to scale your business in a way that's much more cost effective. This one you can read later. Okay, this is a pretty important concept here of differentiation and badge value. But if you start with the differentiation, you really want to end up, if you are fantastically successful, you'll be in that upper right-hand corner of that box on the left. That means that you're highly differentiated, and there are tons of consumers who really want your product. Can anybody think of any examples? How about Airbnb and Uber? Okay? I'm 45 years old. Steve, we're roughly in the same range, right? All right, in the same ballpark. When I grew up, my mother told me repeatedly and constantly, never get in a car with a stranger. And sure as hell, don't go home and sleep in their house, right? Yet, here with Uber and Airbnb, they really got into that upper quadrant because their product was so differentiated, so innovative, and there was such a high consumer demand that it just ran over all previous conventions. It ran over all of the laws. It was illegal, right? It ran over all entrenched political interests, unions, et cetera. So that's a great, oh, hang on one sec here. That, I would say, is a really good example of how to get in that upper right-hand quadrant. But that's not necessarily where you need to be. You can differentiate your product and not have huge consumer demand to begin with. You just need to match your resource investment with what your demand curve is going to look like. So the next one here is this concept of badge value, which Brandy mentioned also. So badge value is the exercise of, through consuming or wearing or purchasing, projecting something about yourself. And if you can achieve badge value with your brand, it's a fantastic way to differentiate your product and will really help with consumer and account activation. So in terms of badge value, let me see if I have an example here in my notes even that might be interesting. Is anyone familiar with the Grey Goose ordering case study that was done maybe 10 years ago? Steve, you know Fizz, the Fizz agency? Okay. So Grey Goose is really, and was particularly at its launch, an aspirational brand. People connoted Grey Goose with excellence, the pinnacle of quality, the best. So the case study tested how people ordered Grey Goose in on-premise accounts. And what the data showed is that when somebody ordered Grey Goose, they did it in a 20% louder voice than when they ordered other vodkas, all right? I have a friend, this is another example of how powerful badge value is. He came to the United States from Cuba in the early 1960s. He was a political prisoner and he escaped from jail. He was a skinny guy and literally some people came in on visiting day and they brought in a woman's dress and he put the dress on and he walked out the front door of the prison. And he took a boat to the United States and he got a job at the House of Pancakes in Miami. And he worked 7 days a week washing dishes. And he said to me, you know what really kept me going? 7 days a week, 12 hours a day washing dishes. I wanted two things in the world. I wanted a Cadillac and I wanted a table at 21 Club. So that's the power of an aspirational badge brand. Those things meant so much to him. So on the next one here, all right. Okay, so I've jumped ahead a few there. Let's talk about picking a distributor. Top-tier distributors, they have very large footprints. They've got a lot of leverage, and they've got a ton of retail account penetration. So if you can get into a top-tier distributor and you have the right expectations, it can be a fantastic way to open accounts because it's very easy from an administrative standpoint. That said, top-tier distributors is also where you find the largest suppliers, and the largest suppliers have the most leverage, so it's very easy to get lost in the mix, and you're typically not going to be a priority. You're definitely not going to be a priority, right? Which comes back to this concept of fair share of attention, which I'll touch on more later. Second-tier distributors can also be an excellent option, and you have to weigh with a second-tier distributor what type of penetration, reach, and leverage do they have with the retail accounts where you ultimately want to get your product. That said, if you get in with the right one and you have a good fit with their portfolio and they believe that your brand can really have a meaningful impact from them, they will tend to get behind you or have the possibility of getting behind you more in a way that they can potentially help you grow your brand as opposed to just take orders. And then the third option are clearing distributors. Clearing distributors, in essence, provide a platform for you to sell directly to retail in a way that is compliant from a regulatory standpoint and also very cost effective. They don't take large gross margins. They typically take a small back office per case processing fee. We do this in a few markets for our clients. Let's see here. Okay, things that you can do to help you get more than your above fair share of attention with distributors. The first is you can give generous margins and healthy incentives to the salespeople. The second is invest in the distributor relationship. Communicate with them, spend time with them, value their time. That's a very important one. And the last is invest in in-market sales, brand ambassadors, POS materials, anything that you can do to make it as easy as possible for the salesperson to sell your product. And going back to this concept of differentiation, if you're trying to get a salesperson to make a substitution sale, that's a very difficult proposition, because what you're telling that salesperson is, don't sell this product that you're already selling that's very easy for you to sell. Instead, sell my product, which is a much tougher sell, and you're not going to make any more money on it. So you want to figure out a way that you have a differentiated product, so it's an accretive sale. So your salesperson is going to make one more sale and make that much more money. These are things to avoid when dealing with distributors. Simply speaking, don't be unprofessional, okay? Make sure you have a well-thought-out plan and that you're able to execute in a very tight manner. Distributors have almost an intuitive sense where they can smell weakness. They can tell if you're undercapitalized. They can tell if you have unrealistic expectations, and they can tell if you're just not going to be able to execute on your plan. And all of these things make it just even easier for them to say no. So make sure you've got a good plan, that your resources are able to execute or match to the requirements of that plan, and have realistic expectations when you go into a distributor. This is a little bit about developing, and this is how the switch between when you're originally pushing your product to get consumers to try it, and then the leverage that you have with the distributors is very low, and then gradually you can develop a pull model where it becomes imbalance, where your product is being sold, but you also have genuine consumer pull where clients are taking your product off of the shelf. Again, more about the balance of power. This is, let me talk a little bit about the infrastructural setup. And I think unfortunately, it looks like there's an error on this slide. The top box, and I'll correct this in the one that goes out to everyone, should say front office services, and the bottom is back office services. So the front office services, those are the things where you work on selling to your distributor, you sell to the retailers, you solicit demand, you do tastings, you do in-store events, consumer marketing. And then the bottom, these are what we would call back office services. These are the things we do at Park Street. Everything that you can think of that isn't sales, marketing, and product development. So that was, as I mentioned before, the regulatory compliance, the license infrastructure, order fulfillment, warehousing, logistics, accounting, the real grinding. So there's 3 different approaches to taking care of both of the front office and back office needs. The first is an integrated approach. That's an entity or a supplier that owns everything. They have their own back office set up, they have their own front office set up, they have their own sales and marketing teams, they do it all. The second would be a bundled or an agency approach. This is often referred to as a full-service importer or national distributor model, and that's where your brand often goes into a portfolio of other brands, and they do all of the sales and marketing, but they also control all of the sales and marketing budgets and activities, and there's quite a bit less transparency, and you've got much less control over the team. And then the third is what we would call an unbundled approach, where you use 2 different solutions for your front office and your back office. And I'll give examples of each of these 3. So this is really simple. On the integrated, you can see Constellation, Diageo, a lot of the very large suppliers, most of the very large suppliers use that model. On a bundled or agency approach, there are 3 examples of, I guess, former bundled and agency approaches that have all subsequently been unwound. And then the last would be the unbundled approach. And these are a few examples of clients that we work with, where on the left hand you see that who the client is, and on the right you see some of them use their own sales and marketing solutions in-house, and others use third-party sales and marketing solutions providers, like Steve's company, for instance. Let's see what else we have here. And I think that's really, I think I'm cutting it a little close on time. Does anybody have any questions? Should we turn it over a little bit?
Sure, take a couple questions.
Easy ones to start. Let's build some momentum, which is something you should do with your distributors. Celebrate incremental wins. So who's got an easy question to get us started? Easy, no problem. Okay, so in that case, I'll just close by saying really quickly, if anybody does have any follow-up questions or would like to get a copy of this deck, You're welcome to get it from me, from Sarah, just reached out to us. If anyone has any issues that they'd like to discuss with respect to their route to market, we love doing favors. We love providing advice, not only for our clients, but for other people in the industry. We love building relationships. The more people that are succeeding, the better it is for everybody in this room. So thanks very much.